And the more trapped I became, the more I felt like I was just going to be a slave for the rest of my life. There was no getting out. Towards the end, he was threatening to kill me and the kids.
Many victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking live in fear of the person who harmed them, and having a place that they can live and know that their address will be completely confidential gives them such a sense of peace.
We never know who's been victimized, so we want to be careful about what we say, the language we use. Victims of trauma experience a profound change in not only their physiology and their nervous systems, but also their worldview. And so they need our compassion and our kindness and our patience.
Often, people are asked for an address to complete routine tasks, to open a bank account, get a cell phone, sign up for utilities, receive medical care, and more.
I'm going to need the address that you're moving to.
If you could just give us some basic information, your name, your phone number, and your home address.
Up at the top of all of the forms will be your name and your address.
The Montana Department of Justice designed the Address Confidentiality Program, ACP, in 2006 to help protect residents of Montana who are survivors of these crimes. The program is administered by the Montana Attorney General's Office.
The Address Confidentiality Program, or ACP, is a tool for survivors of domestic abuse, sexual assault, and stalking to use a substitute address in place of their home address.
The Address Confidentiality Program is one of the services that the Office of Victim Services provide for residents of Montana, a resource that survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking can use in order to keep their actual physical address secure and safe. The participants that we have in this program literally live their life in fear. They fear for their life, they fear for their children's life, they fear that their children are going to be taken away from them. So this program becomes a lifeline for those folks.
It's really difficult to keep a home address confidential these days, but ACP is a good tool to be able to use to do that. If a participant applies for our program, I believe that a home address can be protected from being sought and found by an abuser.
The only people who know an ACP participant's home address should be the applicant, any co-applicants, like children or a spouse, and ACP staff. The purpose of the Address Confidentiality Program is to give a survivor an address to use when seeking services. State or local government agencies, employees of the courts, and law enforcement are required to use the ACP address. Private businesses are not required to use the address, but are encouraged to accept the substitute address when the ACP participant is a customer.
Well, it's important for private businesses and especially medical clinics to accept the ACP card, because those individuals who've qualified certainly have been the survivors of significant trauma.
Any transaction from a checking account, a savings account, a car loan, a home loan, really any transaction needs a home address in order to identify the client, and that's through banking law. This type of program would very much help us to be able to help the clients access some of those banking services that maybe they can't get when they don't have a physical address or aren't able to or willing to provide one of those physical addresses.
Here's how the Montana Address Confidentiality Program works. To enroll, an ACP application and checklist must be completed and submitted along with proof of eligibility, like a protection order or a law enforcement report, and proof of Montana residency. Once the application package is complete, it should be mailed to the Office of Victim Services. Once the application is received, ACP staff will review it. If all necessary documents are received, the ACP application will be approved, and an ACP card will be issued to the applicant. Montana ACP has two components. First, an ACP applicant is issued a substitute address to use instead of their home address when interacting with state or local government. The second component is that ACP receives first-class mail on behalf of participants. ACP staff sorts and repackages unopened mail and forwards it to the participant at a safe place of their choosing. ACP will send mail to a home, post office box, or any other address specified by the participant. The goal of Montana's Address Confidentiality Program is to help survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking to stay safe from further harm or abuse. The ACP card with a substitute address can be used to get a driver's license, register a vehicle, register to vote, access public benefits and Medicaid, seek assistance for child support, correspond with financial institutions, utilities, medical facilities, insurance companies, and more.
I think it's very important that customer service representatives in our industry and others are aware of the address confidentiality program that these victims and survivors are trying to utilize to protect themselves. And the more they know when they're presented that ACP card, then they know how to handle things from there going forward on behalf of this individual.
Using the substitute address minimizes the likelihood of a participant being found by an abuser and re-assaulted. If you're presented with a card that indicates the person you're serving is enrolled in the Address Confidentiality Program, please be discreet and recognize that this person or an immediate family member may have been the victim of traumatic physical or psychological abuse.
Trauma is deeply complicated and manifests differently for different people. When you're interacting with survivors, it's really important to avoid the best you can re-victimizing them or re-traumatizing them through the interactions. And you can do that in part by not asking questions that are too invasive, by respecting their boundaries, and by being as respectful as possible.
Trauma can affect a person on a number of levels: personally, interpersonally, at their job, financially. In our work at the personal level, we see lots of post-traumatic stress symptoms, but more long-term, we see important health consequences. So anxiety, depression, physical pain, substance use disorders. There's no one way that a traumatized person behaves, but they can experience dysregulation in their nervous system. So sometimes they're in a really hyperactivated state, playing out a fight or flight response. At other times, they're experiencing more numbness or disassociation, and they're not completely mindful or present.
Often, ACP participants have recently upended their lives in order to get away from an abuser. Some survivors need public benefits like food stamps and cash assistance, and low-cost health care through Medicaid in order to get back on their feet. If you work for a private business, there's a very real chance that you may interact with an ACP participant. How can you help?
We need to know the customer's service address so that we can go out and perform any kind of service we need to on the gas or the electric system. However, we can definitely use an alternate mailing address for any correspondence with the customer, and that's exactly the kind of partnership that I think makes sense.
Before being enrolled in ACP, an applicant is strongly encouraged to meet with a local victims advocate to create an in-depth safety plan.
The advocates are highly trained and ready to provide guidance and support as a survivor navigates their new life. In addition to enrolling in the Address Confidentiality Program, survivors should consider an order of protection or a formal parenting plan or divorce to allow for the protection of their children, and ongoing support from a domestic violence program to help them rebuild their life is available and important.
In addition to advocates, survivors often need legal help.
There may be free legal help available for people who need to keep their address safe. If you have any questions about the Address Confidentiality Program or your rights, it's always a good idea to talk to a lawyer. You can apply for free legal help from Montana Legal Services Association. You can do that online at mtlsa.org by calling our helpline or visiting an office in Missoula, Billings, or Helena.
Here is an example of how someone working in a private business may encounter an address confidentiality program participant.
How can we help you today?
I need to open a checking account.
Okay, go ahead and take a seat. Do you have your driver's license with the current address on it?
I'd like you to use my ACP card for the address.
Okay, I am familiar with this. Would it be okay if we took a copy of both of your IDs today?
You can take a copy, but if you could just black out the address on my ID, that would be great.
Yes, of course.
I think there's real value in all of us who work with customers to have sensitivity to our customer situations and really to have some training and awareness about how to identify what that customer's needs may be and to help problem solve the best way to meet those needs.
Survivors of violent crime absolutely need to be protected in that way and be able to have the comfort of knowing their address is kept private. And we in the insurance industry help them do that in every way possible.
Please think about the role you can play in helping these survivors and their families stay safe. Let's watch another interaction with an ACP participant.
Do you have an appointment with us today?
I do, at 10:30.
Okay, I have a little bit of paperwork for you. Just some basic information, your name, phone number, and home address.
I'm a little hesitant about giving out my personal address, but I do have an ACP card.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with this. Does your insurance company bill to this address?
It does.
So we go ahead and send your bill to Helena?
Yes, I do live locally, but my mailing address is Helena.
Okay, great.
Be understanding if the participant's behavior seems unusual.
Survivors might exhibit anger, inappropriate use of humor, anything they can do to protect themselves from the shame and guilt that they're feeling. Sharing intimate details of a victimization can further aggravate PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions that arise from the abuse.
To avoid triggering someone, you can avoid asking them details of the event. You can avoid making light of the situation, and you can avoid comparing your own experiences to theirs.
I think we still have the perception that domestic violence is just a private affair between the husband and wife or partners. And really it's all of our problems because it does affect us. It affects us in the workplace. It affects the children in school. It is a major issue, and I think it's something that we all need to recognize, and that I think that we can all be a part of the solution.
One thing this video aims to accomplish is simply more awareness about the Address Confidentiality Program. Although program participants typically have no problem accessing services, they often have to explain what the Address Confidentiality Program is and why they are enrolled. If you know what ACP can do to help survivors, you'll be able to provide more compassionate service and refer survivors who may be eligible to participate. Private businesses play an important role in strengthening the Address Confidentiality Program. Other community members can make a difference too. Please share this information with everyone who may be able to help.
If you're presented with an address confidentiality card, it's a good signal that somebody's probably experienced some pretty traumatic events. And just simply doing your best to be as kind, as helpful, and as calm as you can be goes a really long way. It's really helpful.
I highly encourage other businesses and individuals to learn about the ACP. This is a very beneficial program for individuals that don't have the advantages and things that we take for granted on a daily basis.
And I think most of us, when confronted with a real life situation, confronted with the facts, really do want to help. And this is a great additional way to help.
As a medical doctor, as a woman, as a mother, I strongly encourage businesses who are outside of the government and not mandated to utilize this program to basically embrace the Address Confidentiality Program. It's only a win-win as far as I can see.
If you or someone you know would benefit from enrolling in the ACP, please visit dojmt.gov/victims or call the Office of Victim Services toll-free at 1-800-498-6455.